Wolf Lake, there's 804 surface acres to Wolf Lake, 419 on the Illinois side, and 385 on the Indiana side. Hammond, of course, manages the Indiana side. The Illinois Department of Natural Resources manages the Illinois side. The dikes were put in during the 50s when they were building the Indiana Toll Road next to the Skyway. And they built the dikes to not only provide access to the manpower, the workers, but it's also for use to transport supplies to the work site. And so as all government projects are, when they completed the project, they left the dikes behind. So now you would probably create a civil war if you're trying to remove the state line dike, because the fishermen would rise up and protest. However, within the last couple years, Wisconsin got some money, about $8 million to do the shoreline. I would say 90% of the shoreline comprises of slag. And it's rare that you can find natural soil. So in recent years, it's not beyond $8 million to redo the shoreline. So we would have a more natural shoreline, creating fisheries, and it would be used on both sides of Wolf Lake. Well,
Michael?
Any other questions?
You say something about dumping of nuclear waste?
Yes, in fact, Bruce Lee had the good story. Yes, Lee had the good story to that. So you take over on that one. Well, because that was before I came here, so I wasn't involved.
I was hoping you'd know the answer to the question of why there used to be a sign by I-94 saying no dumping of radioactive waste.
Without permission.
Without
Yeah.
In Wolf Lake. Does anybody else remember that sign?
That's why I asked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does anybody have an answer?
Michael gave us one, but I don't know if it's the right one. What is your answer?
I gave you the answer once because Lee had given me the answer.
Well,
you see how they're both trying to avoid answering.
well, that's because I've never been able to find out whether it's really true or not. But in 1965, I was editor of the Hyde Park Herald, and I attended at the University of Chicago in the Jones Chemistry Lab, which had been the headquarters of the Manhattan Project. And it was a reunion of persons who had participated in the Manhattan Project. Glenn Seaborg was there. I remember him specifically, and remember some of the others. I was covering it as editor of the Hyde Park Herald. And they were, I was just blown away. They were sort of celebrating the discovery of plutonium and all kinds of, to me, horrific things. And I was friends with Norman McLean, the person who wrote A River Flows Through It.
Run through it. And I went to visit him afterwards, and I told him about how creepy I had thought this event was. And of course, he had been on the campus, and he was a good friend of the man who had been the business manager for the Manhattan Project. And so, but Norman always had a good story, as you know, if you've read his book. And now he said to me, "Do you know why that sign is by Wolf Lake?"
And I said, no, but every time my family and I are on the way to the dunes or to Michigan, we go, every time we say, why is this sign here? So the story that he told me, and I cannot vouch for its accuracy, but the story that he told me was that in 1945, at the end of World War II, there was a gathering of physicists in the Jones Chemistry Lab to decide who was going, international gathering of physicists, to decide who was going to do what research with plutonium. And now I come to the part of the story that I think I believe the least. But he said that there was a test tube with plutonium in it, which had been flown from Berkeley, where it had been produced with the cyclotron, and it was sitting in the sink of the laboratory next door to the room where the physicists were talking. And a janitor came in to clean up, and he poured the test tube down the sink. Now, I don't really think in a university chemistry lab a janitor would be, empty out a test tube. But he said that's what happened. And so with great consternation, they discovered that plutonium had been, that they were preparing to do research with, had been poured down the drain. And they thought about it a little bit more and thought, oh my God, it's going down, into the sewer system. So they went to the authorities and explained why they had to dig up the sewer system along 57th Street and recover this hot material, radioactive material, and they brought it out and dumped it into Wolf Lake. And then they got to thinking about it some more. So maybe that wasn't such a good idea. Now,
is there any drinking involved in that?
now I do know, and this is in the literature, I do know that there was not as much understanding about radioactivity at that point in time as was gained later, and there were a lot of people actually who participated in Los Alamos and the Manhattan Project who were exposed to radiation and so forth. So there's that little bit. So they had to go again to the authorities, only this time to the city of Hammond, and explain that this mistake had been made, and they retrieved it again, encased it in concrete, and according to Norman, dumped it into Lake Michigan. And the city of Hammond put the sign up. Now, I know the sign was there because I have a photograph of my daughter standing by the sign. When she was 17, she took a journalism class at Columbia College. And she actually she started to the University of Chicago. She left high school. They used to have this early entry program. So she was going to the University of Chicago, but she didn't like it much. She kept saying, Mom, all they want to do is put me in graduate school. I don't want to go to graduate school. So she would take time off. So she had taken time off and worked for a year as an editorial assistant at the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists. And she heard there were a lot of myths and stories about the Manhattan Project and so forth. So anyway, so we decided, she was taking this journalism class at Columbia College. They didn't teach journalism at the University of Chicago. And so we decided to try to find out the reality. So we went out and we took pictures, and I still have it, and so forth. And then we went to talk to Norman. And he was not well at that point, and he said he would try to arrange a meeting with, his last name was Thompson, the man who had been the business manager for the Manhattan Project, and that he could confirm this story that Norman had told. Well, the bottom line is Compton was very ill and died before we could talk to him, so we still don't know. But every time we go past there still, the sign is gone, but I'm still wondering, do would they put up a sign saying, "No dumping of radioactive waste without permission." Oh, that's the source.